Hello, listeners. This is Sudipto Mandal, and you are listening to the CHRO Mindset podcast.
Hello, listeners. Welcome back to the season 3 of the CHRO Mindset podcast. Following an amazing first 2 seasons, we are returning with even more engaging discussions and practical takeaways. Today, we have Mr. Sudipto Mandal who has joined us for the podcast. He's the kind who transforms companies from the inside out. With over 27 years across industries as varied as FMCG, tech, retail, and manufacturing, Sudipto has seen how culture, capability, and care can move the business needle. And he has made that happen time and again. A TIS alumnus with stints across plant floors and boardrooms, he brings a rare blend of hands on people wisdom and strategic foresight. Whether it's driving organizational wide cultural change, launching digital HR programs, or designing retention frameworks that actually work, Sudipto's work always ties back to one thing: creating environments where both people and performance thrive. As CHRO, he has led bold restructuring efforts, shaped next gen HR policies, and helped companies navigate the most human challenges with both empathy and execution. Beyond the office, he is a certified coach, a sought after speaker at IIMs and NITs, and major forums like Business World and Economic Times. At heart, he believes HR isn't about processes, it's about people and the quiet power of getting the culture right. Sudipto sir, we are thrilled to have you here. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Pulkit. I'm kind of little overwhelmed the kind of introduction you have shared.
Okay, thank you. So today's topic of podcast is why HR leaders should stop chasing engagement and start designing for energy. We have all had moments at work that drained us and those rare ones that lifted us. But what if we have been measuring the wrong thing all along? In today's episode, we challenge the traditional obsession with employee engagement and introduce a more vital metric: energy. You'll hear why engagement surveys are falling short and how the most progressive HR leaders are now designing for energy at the individual team and organizational level. We'll also explore what it takes to build high energy teams, from creating roles that align with people's natural rhythms to unlocking autonomy, flow, and purpose. We'll also discuss why mindset often matters more than the structure and what the first steps look like for CHROs ready to make the leap. You'll also get candid takes on meetings versus micromanagement, the real role of HR in energy design, and whether we are tracking engagement because it's easy, not because it works. If you're rethinking how work feels, not just how it functions, this episode is for you. So let's get started with an icebreaker question, Sudipto sir. What's one moment at work that completely drained you and one that gave you a lot of energy?
Pulkit, I would probably not take it on the past tense because what I'm going
Okay.
to say is going to be universal truth for me throughout. So I'll put it in the present tense and I'll say that the one word, if you say that, would be probably negativity at work. That kind of completely puts me down.
Okay.
And if you look at, or rather, if you ask me that what really uh, brings in positivity, then I would say that it's people. In during our school days, we have learned something called resonance, right? So when
Yeah.
so many people they kind of action together, then I think the power of that is not just the number of people, but it is multiplied by so many things, which can actually bring down a bridge on the river when the soldiers march on it, right? That's the power of resonance. So same thing I feel with people. So that's the workplace. I think people is equal to resonance for me, and that's the source of energy and positivity.
Awesome. Yeah, we have all learned it in physics, resonance, and I totally agree with you. Okay. Let's now get into the core theme, right, that we have for today, which is engagement versus energy, right? Uh, so, could you walk us through what's the difference between employee engagement and energy, and why does it matter?
Well, Pulkit, I think traditionally there have been many definitions of engagement, right? The way we look at it, from the 3S model, that say, stay, serve. That was Evan Hewitt's model. Then you also know about Gallup's Q12 model. Like that, there are models available for engagement, right?
Yep.
But I would probably come down to my own definition a little later about engagement if required. But before that, let me just also share my thought about energy. How is energy different? Right? If I again go back to science, energy is equal to power into time. Okay, so if I have to translate that scientific definition into something which I can articulate in a sentence, that I would say the strength and vitality that is required for sustained physical and mental activity. So that sustenance part is very important, right? That's what it is energy. So these are the two different things. I think energy is something which is much deeper. It's not just one dimensional, it's a combination of physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual dimensions. These are all interconnected, right? And if you just remove or subtract any one of it, then I think you'll find that our capacity to fulfill, that potential of talent or skill, that will diminish. On the other hand, engagement is something which is, as I mentioned, that there are different tools based on that we try to measure engagement. But for me, engagement is slightly different, and it is not that I'm sharing. I have actually experimented that, implemented that in organizations. If you really look deeper, then what is engagement at the workplace? It is actually for an individual who is coming to work primarily for work. He should first feel attached to his job in terms of the work that he does, right? And for that, you require primarily two things. One is the skill and competency. And second thing is the environment where you are able to put your skill and competency to work for output. Okay. If these two are taken care of, I believe that 80% of your engagement is taken care of. And then so-called other aspects, which is your workplace, all the fun things that you do, your food in the canteen or the spa if you have, those are probably only bring in 20% of engagement. That's the icing on the cake, but not the core. And that's where probably many organizations they fail in terms of engagement. They try to address that. I call them not the engagement, but those are employee connect or experience initiatives, not necessarily the deeper aspect of engagement. So engagement, one person should feel really satisfied, should feel really contented with the work first. If that happens, your majority of engagement is taken care of. And the rest of the things is in the HR term, that relatedness, as you talk about. Those are relatedness. One has to really, really think and ask that if I am stressed at work, if I am very tensed about my work, then whatever fun things that you do, whatever best food you provide at the workplace, whatever, a spa or other things that you do at the workplace, the person will not be able to feel engaged or even comfortable. So let's focus on that aspects, that how we can create an environment where people foster in terms of developing their skills and competencies, and how we provide an environment by way of a non-political environment of supporting managers, where the managers will help to ensure that whatever skills and competencies an individual or an employee has developed, how he or she can actually put it into the work, and then the whole cycle or the chain will continue, that you put in that to work properly, you are contributing, and you will get recognized, your growth will happen, everything will come in place, and that's where employee will feel engaged.
Wonderful perspective there. So I think what you're trying to say is that unless the connected work is not happening, right, no matter any initiatives that the HR team takes, things are not going to work out. So building on that, right, I think most of the HR teams run these engagement surveys to understand, like state of the employee, right, in the organization. So why do you believe engagement surveys no longer reflect the true state of employee experience? Because there are both sides of, there are two school of thoughts, right? One believes it doesn't work that ways, and the other believes that, it actually works. So your views on that, please.
Yeah, Pulkit, I would not say that, is either this way or the other way completely. It
Okay.
is contextual.
Okay.
For an organization which is probably still not matured enough, that point of time, if you are starting to understand, you may still use the tool of engagement in terms of the survey, right?
Okay.
But one has to understand in a survey, typically, as I mentioned, that you know it's going to probably give you a perspective of we versus they. The moment you launch a survey, what are you trying to essentially address? You are telling the employees that, okay, on these aspects, you please rate us, or you
Hmm.
please rate.
Hmm.
The moment you do that, this rating, this means who is rating whom? The
Hmm.
employees rating the management. So the divide
Hmm.
between management and employees, that becomes more obvious. So
Hmm.
that's why I think in a very matured sense, when you when you look at the psychology, you like to probably understand the context and say, is it still valid for my organization to do the survey? On the other hand, I can give you a beautiful experience, which, as I mentioned, that okay, I had experimented and probably implemented in one of the organizations. We're saying that looking at my previous definition of engagement, that how do you first focus on the skill and competencies and the work processes. We called it bettering it. So
Hmm.
across sales location in an organization, uh, we did that. It's a bettering it initiative. That first 6 months, we only looked at what are the things which are hindering an employee to perform properly in terms of skills competencies, in terms of work environment, in terms of processes. Once you are able to bring in that standard of conducive workplace, that point of time, the engagement initiative started. I mean,
Hmm.
when I did that way back, I think in 2019, 2019. And the tool that I used was appreciative inquiry. Because engagement is something which is not very tangible, right? We try to make it tangible and try to measure, but it is actually intangible. It's a much more complex subject, Pulkit.
Hmm.
So what
Hmm.
we did, we said that using appreciative inquiry, we will empower employees and the managers that they should actually appreciate uh, the positivity of people, leveraging the strength. That's the concept of appreciative inquiry. And that's how kind of creating that platform to generate more and more positive energy among employees.
Hmm.
And we deliberately said that we are not going to measure it. The moment you are trying to measure, that means it's you are defeating the purpose. If
Hmm.
you are empowering people to bring in their more energy, positivity, that is for themselves.
Hmm.
Why
Hmm.
someone would constantly try to measure it and put a kind of a cliched tag into that. So appreciative
Hmm.
inquiry was done across locations after bettering it initiative was successful. So that
Hmm.
was the complementary initiative, and that's how we looked at engagement, not a typical survey of engagement.
Okay, interesting. So, uh, appreciative inquiry. I think that's one framework that absolutely, listeners who are tuned into today's podcast can sort of go and do more research on and try to see how they can apply that to their respective organizations. Now, talking about engagement, right, versus energy. So let's now skip to the energy side of the house. So, what's your take on how should HR teams start measuring energy at individual team and org level? Because it's although everyone can see for it, but it's very difficult to measure. It's sort of like air, right? So,
Yeah,
your thoughts on that, please.
right. So it is very intangible. And
Okay.
sometimes I think we should stop with this phobia of measuring everything.
Hmm.
I give you an example that suppose you are planting a sapling,
Yeah.
what will happen? You will, give water, you will give nutrition, and automatically the first thing that will happen is its root will start growing,
Hmm.
and then the leaves will also start coming up.
Yeah.
But if every day, if you try to figure out how much the root has grown, that means you unroot it, measure it, and then replant it. Unroot it, measure it, replant it. What will happen to that sapling?
Hmm.
So same thing happens with energy. Same thing happens with engagement. If you
Hmm.
try to measure it on a regular interval, then I think it will probably die soon. It will defeat the purpose. So what you should do actually is try to nurture it as much as possible, and automatically the plant will grow from a small sapling. It will become a plant and then a tree. So
Very
don't kill
interesting.
it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, I understood. Very profound. I think we've got to a point because uh, whatever can be measured starts to get measured, right? I think that's what companies typically do. Um, so yeah, absolutely. Let's now transition into uh, what it takes to really uh, start to design systems that sort of support this entire concept of energy, right? So, do you believe designing for energy requires structural changes, or do you think it requires mindset shifts first?
Yeah, of course. I think mindset change, that should be the
Yeah,
first step towards that.
yeah.
But eventually you need to have a uh, you know have a conscious maintenance of kind of a balance, optimal balance between these two. Once you create or rather focus on the mindset shift, then to sustain it you require a kind of a structure. Without the structure, it may not sustain properly. So there are
Mm,
organizational processes, right? So whether it's your performance management processes or any other processes, those structure will help. And then once that happens, again, you should not get very myopic by looking at only at the structure. Then you have to continuously shift between juggle between mindset and structure, till the
mm,
time eventually it becomes kind of a culture. It's like an energy culture, and that would be like a self-sustaining ritual. That's how the organization will see it. But initially you will start with the mindset change, then bring in the structure, then you also slowly look at whether the mindset changes are actually happening or people are following just the structure. So you have to walk on both ways, and then
mm.
eventually it will flow very seamlessly, and it will take a shape of a culture, and it will become like a normal ritual for everybody.
Okay, interesting. Uh, so, please talk to us. What is the role of purpose, autonomy, and flow in building high energy teams?
Energy is something um, which I already talked about, right? Physics definition and otherwise. But the primary thing is that energy actually it has to flow from within, right?
Mm,
That's the most effective and essential way of getting the best out of energy. So the way I look at it, purpose is a kind of inspiring pull. It's like a north star,
mm,
right? So that's the purpose. And I would say that autonomy probably would be the fuel, uh, the tool to ignite one, so that the person gets attracted towards that purpose.
mm,
And I would say the flow is the power of resonance.
mm.
Once your North Star is fine with the purpose, you provide autonomy, which is basically the fuel, then automatically the flow will happen, and energy will flow.
Great. Uh, Very, very nice perspective again there, Sudipto sir. Now let's talk about, how should one design roles or workflows that align with energy rhythms instead of just output? I think this is more to do with how to sort of, get to a process so that the output gets derived in a very self-sustaining mode.
Yeah, so I mean, this is also a kind of a cultural thing. Okay? I
Yeah,
would like to tell things little differently,
yeah,
because in a traditional way, we create job description, job specification, KRAs, smart goals. That's all fine.
yeah.
But when you when you actually design role, you should also leave a space for innovation,
Hmm.
the fluidity.
Hmm.
Otherwise, you are going to become very rigid and
Hmm.
creating a boundary,
Yeah.
and you are going to kill the innovation or the fluidity of individuals' mind and thoughts, right?
Yeah.
So, so that's how you need to create a balance. And
Okay.
if you look at the organizations who have progressed, they probably might be having, they would be definitely having a core process, but they will also leave a kind of a space for where people can play around to bring the best out of individuals' thought, individuals, innovations. That's the way. I'll give a couple of examples. In
Sure.
one of the organizations I worked, um, we walked up to our CEO and MD and we said that, we need to really focus on our vision and mission statement,
Hmm.
and we should really create, in terms of create an awareness around that. And the CEO said, that's on my deathbed.
Hmm.
Initially, we didn't understand.
Hmm.
That point of time, I was not the HR head, even the HR head. Later
Hmm.
on, we came back, then it gave me a profound thought that saying that, how the CEO is having that wisdom. The moment you write down the mission and vision statement, that means you are telling all the employees that you have to exactly follow that line.
Hmm.
So, where is the individuality? Where is the innovation? Right? So, if one of your value system is to innovate, you have to think, um, you know, beyond boundaries. Then this sort of initiatives where you are telling people that this is the only way of doing things, this is the only mission, only vision, is actually binding you.
Hmm.
Okay, so that's the kind of a space you need to. So as per the CEO, the thought was that your behavior, the senior leadership's behavior, that should reflect in terms of what kind of visions and missions they are uh, aligned with. But at the same time, if you really try to put it in words and say, okay, that's the only thing you follow, you're restricting the potential, right?
Hmm.
The same thing goes in terms of designing the goals.
Hmm.
So the organization I'm talking about uh, was a quite matured, progressive organization. So as a result, I think most of the systems processes were all set. Now, how to set a goal? While we say that smart goals are important, yes, that is important, but at the same time, you need to create or provide certain space by way of saying that how do you relook at current processes? That means the possibilities are immense. You are not binding that this process has to be only done in this manner. So you are inviting thoughts, you are inviting wisdom, you are inviting intelligence of an employee through your goal setting process itself, where the person can actually think beyond and try for continuous improvement, right, and innovation. So that's the way you kind of create roles, and also supported by this kind of a structure where there is a certain structure is non-compromisable, but you also provide certain space, and that's where the organization.
Oh, what a great perspective, sir. Thanks for sharing that. Uh, Now let's talk about first-time CHROs, right? Who don't have a very uh, detailed experience of how things work out, right? So for them, what's your advice? What should be the first step they should take if they want to make that leap of faith or that shift from engagement to energy?
I think first thing I would say that stop looking at your job clinically.
Hmm.
Okay, so
Hmm.
the moment you start looking at your job clinically, then you are probably getting yourself detached from the aspects of humanity,
Hmm.
where the essence actually is emotion, right?
Hmm.
So don't do a tick mark job. Try to understand the spirit behind your job, and also try to influence the leadership team, because whatever said and done in the corporate sector, left brain, uh, that that dominates, right? But this the right brain is immensely powerful, right?
Yeah.
So that typically EQ part, how do you probably nurture EQ among the leaders so that they are able to understand, appreciate that what you are doing, which is probably not always measurable. It is sometimes intangible, but it has got tremendous power in unleashing the potential of people if you are able to touch the emotion of people. So that's, I think, if you are able to do that, it's not so easy. It's difficult because to convince your leadership, to convince the um, analytical, logical environment, you first of all need to be very analytical and logical, right? So you'll be able to gain the confidence from other people that you are logical, you are analytical. In spite of that, you are focusing on the emotional side of people, right? So that is very important. So you need to
Understood.
balance between that. So what I do, I understand the business very well, get into the finance, get into the um, uh, technical aspects of business, get into the marketing aspect of business. So my leadership team, they know that I can contribute in each and every area. So it is not that just because I'm propagating my area of HR. And in spite of that, when I'm still propagating emotion, propagating the humanity, or propagating the human aspect, the credibility of that is high. It becomes easier for you to influence, right? So it's a difficult job. So that's how I would say the first time CHROs, that you understand the business, gain the confidence of people, tell them that okay, what a marketing head can do, you can also do. Nothing is rocket science. You need to have that confidence. You need to spend some time for that. But don't forget that your core area of empathy, emotion, and then work on that.
Awesome. Totally bang on. And I think that's, uh, you know, that's one caveat that all HR leaders start to sort of now start to look at, because many a times, they say that we don't have a seat in the boardroom, but then it's also about, even if you had one, right? How are you going to voice your opinion, right? Which is where having a complete sense of how business works is extremely crucial. Thank you for that. Let's now get into our rapid fire section, sir.
All right.
So I'm going to ask you short questions, right? Would prefer short answers, but if you want to elaborate a bit on any one question, any two questions, that's also fine. So let's start with the first question, rapid fire. Energy or enthusiasm, which one is harder to fake?
Hmm, the way I look at it, enthusiasm, it's basically an expression of your feeling for eagerness.
Hmm.
So it's basically one is feeling, another is the expression, right?
Hmm.
So I think that is probably easier to fake, but in that context, if I have to compare, I would say energy is harder to fake
Energy.
because energy is more core.
Okay. What's one meeting you would cancel forever to boost team energy?
No, I'll say review meeting. Research has
Okay.
shown review is basically counterproductive. Too much of review, so it's more like a postmortem. It is like a lag indicator. So if
Huh.
you do too many reviews, then you are actually taking time away from creating lead indicators, right?
Okay.
So I would say review.
Okay. Interesting. Should HR lead energy design or enable managers to own it?
Of course, enable managers to own it.
Okay. What drains high performers more, meetings or micromanagement?
I would say micromanagement.
Okay. Is the office energizing again or still draining?
I would always feel energizing.
Okay. Okay.
Maybe I'm
Interesting.
a people person because, as I say, the resonance. So for
Yeah.
me, it is energizing.
Yeah. 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 Okay, absolutely. Let's now get to our closing question, right? It's been an awesome, interesting conversation, right? Uh, question for you, are we tracking engagement because it's easy or because it's effective?
Because it is easy. Because it
Okay,
is easy, right?
okay.
And as I say that every time we try to prove that something with the number is easy to convince people, right? So
Yeah.
that's why easy to talk about that. But I think we should focus more on relevance, more on effectiveness.
Any thoughts on, what HRs as leaders can do to sort of convince the management that, just because something is easy, we should not be tracking it. Instead, we should sort of look at a contrarian approach, which could be more productive or more effective. Your thoughts on that, please, sir?
I think we just talked about that, right? First of all, you
Yeah.
need to establish your credibility. Then you should start influencing people
Yeah.
as to why intangibles are much more powerful at times, which
Yeah.
is probably
Yeah.
that's where you have
Okay.
to influence them, right? That EQ part, emotional part,
Yeah.
that is
Yeah.
the differentiator, right? So
Yeah.
that's how you have to convince people and influence people as well.
Awesome. Awesome. It's been an amazing conversation, and I must say this is one topic which is very off track, right? It has its own charm, right? Uh, Rarely do I seen any forums, right? I've been to multiple events, forums, right, that talk about HR, but I haven't seen anybody talking about energy, right, and sort of compare that to engagement. So, a brilliant choice of topic there, Sudipto sir, and absolutely fell in love with some of the concepts that you spoke of, right? Starting from establishing connect at work, right? Nothing can come closer to that if one has to sort of build a high power energy team, right? And then some concepts around appreciative inquiry, how you use that to its fullest effect and impact, and brought about a lot of impact and at the organizations that you work for. And particularly the fact that it's important for HRs as leaders to be able to understand how things work from a business perspective, to be able to convince and influence the leadership. That again is a universal truth, but it's always good to hear it from you, right? Senior leaders like you, because this has worked for you. uh, all in all, it's been an amazing conversation. There were quite a few I would say caveats that are going to stay with me, lots of wisdom, but yeah, thanks so very much for sharing your time and wisdom with us today on the CHRO Mindset podcast.
Well, thank you, Pulkit. I must appreciate the kind of topics that you offered, and which also gave me the opportunity to think, and the platform that where I can express things differently, which probably many people don't subscribe to, but at least it looks like it is resonating with you at least. So if more and more people can resonate with that, I'll be happier. Okay. Thank you very much. And you conducted it extremely well. The way you summarized, the way you asked questions. It's a pleasure being here with you.
Thank you so very much. Quick question before we wrap up. How can listeners contact you? There's a lot of HR folks out there, who are struggling in their professional lives. Should they need any guidance, how can they contact you?
No, my LinkedIn profile is all there.
Okay.
And, I always believe that we need to all share and learn from each other. So, of course, there's a constraint of time always is there, but within that, we need to do the best out of that. So, people
Sure.
can definitely contact, and I'll try myself best to probably reciprocate, respond, and learn from others as well.
Sure, sure. Thank you so very much again for joining us today on the CHRO Mindset podcast. To all the listeners, thank you for tuning into today's episode of the CHRO Mindset podcast. We hope you found today's conversation insightful and inspiring. Don't forget to subscribe, share, and leave us a review if you enjoyed the episode. See you in the next episode, and thanks again.